With whom, if I may ask? With Mr. Ambrose, of course. I already told you I came here to see him. I was told to be here at 9. Sallow Face's eyes bored into me, as if he was trying to see a note with the words, April Fool's joke, attached to the back of my head, although it was the middle of summer. Told by whom? He demanded. By Mr. Ambrose. For the first time, I could see a tiny little bit of uncertainty replace some of the sallowness. Mixed into it was a spark of fear. By Mr. Ambrose himself, personally. Yes. Wait a moment, please. I was expecting him to jump up and run off, emulating all the other people hurrying around the entrance hall, but instead he remained sitting where he was and picked up a strange metal horn from his desk, which I hadn't noticed before. It was connected to the desk by a thick tube that vanished into the wood. Stone, are you there? Sallow Face spoke into the metal horn. I stared at him, stupefied. Had he lost his marbles? Did he think this metal thing was a stone? And if so, why was he talking to it? As far as I knew, neither stones nor metal objects were very verbose. The man held the horn to his ear, and a faint, tinny voice came out of it. My mouth dropped open. What was this? I couldn't hear what the voice said, but it was unquestionably human. He was talking to someone through that thing. Sallow Face returned the horn from his ear to his mouth and said, Listen, Stone. There is a young lady here. He threw me a look that made it clear he privately had other names for me, who maintains she has an appointment with Mr. Ambrose. Can you check that for me, please? Go to Simmons and ask, will you? A moment of silence. Then the faint tinny voice started talking again. What? Sallow Face demanded. Not there. What do you mean not? Oh. Quit his job. I see. A thrill went through me, and suddenly I forgot all about the strange listening horn. Quit his job. They had to be talking about the secretary. The secretary who had left. Had they wanted to check whether I really did have an appointment? That must have been it. So they were actually considering letting me up there. For a moment, I wondered whether I should mention that I was the ex-secretary's replacement. Then I remembered that I was a lady, and ladies didn't work for a living, and if I claimed such a thing, Sallow Face would throw me out for sure. Yes, he snapped at that very moment. But what am I to do? If she really has an appointment and I don't let her through, I'll be out on the street tomorrow morning. Yes, so what? What do I care? I say she can go through, so she's your problem now. Sallow Face put down the horn from which protesting shrieks were echoing and turned to me with a syrupy smile on his lips. Very well, Miss Linton. You can go up to the top floor inquiry desk. Mr. Stone is already awaiting you there and anxious to help you. Oh, Mr. Stone, not a stone. So Sallow Face wasn't balmy. Quite a relief, considering I got my directions from him. He pointed me to an open doorway behind his desk. I thanked him more graciously than he deserved, curtsied, and went through the doorway to find myself in a large hallway. Looking up, I saw steps leading up and around the walls of several floors, and these stairs were even steeper than the ones outside the building. Dong. Quickly, I turned my head westwards. There, a small window stood half open, letting a bit of light fall into the stark stone hallway. And through that window there now also came the sound of a bell. A deep, reverberating sound that chilled my bones. Great Paul was striking 9. Dong. I jumped over the first 2 steps, landing on the third and started to race up the stairs taking 2 at a time. Even so, I had hardly put half a dozen steps behind me when the clock struck again. Dong. I redoubled my efforts. I would not stop. I would not give up. And I would certainly not give that man any excuse not to take me on. I would make it in time. Dong. On the first landing I had to stop, or my heart would have burst. My legs already burned like hellfire, and my behind seemed to have an elephant attached to it. Blast it. So much for my resilience. I really needed to get more exercise. Dong. I reached the second landing. The noise of feet scurrying around and paper rustling that filled the hall downstairs was receding. Even over the reverberations of the bell I could hear that up here it was much quieter. Ominously quiet. My feet resounded hollowly on the steps. 3rd floor. Yes. Dong. I had just reached the 4th landing when a burst of sunlight suddenly blinded me and made me falter. I was high up now, up over the rooftops of all the surrounding houses. The cold morning sunlight penetrated the mist that was swirling around the building and streamed in through one of the narrow windows, illuminating the entire upper hallway in bright colors of gold. Quickly, I resumed my sprint up the stairs. No distractions now. The 5th landing. Onward. Once more unto the breach. Dong. The 5th landing. How many floors did this darn building have? I chanced a glance upwards and nearly fell over my feet. Grabbing the railing for support, I pulled myself onto the 6th landing, wheezing with the effort. But I had seen what I needed to see. Only 2 more floors left. Dong. The 6th landing. Nearly there. How many strikes of the clock were still left to me? I quickly counted in my head. Oh no, just 1. Dong. Clutching my aching chest I stumbled onto the top landing and grabbed wildly at the air to find anything to support me. My hand caught a brass doorknob and clasped it, involuntarily pushing the door open. I had made it. Unable to stop, I practically fell into the room beyond. I only came to a stop several fumbling steps later, falling to my knees, gasping, in front of a dark wood desk, behind which sat a narrow-faced young man who seemed rather surprised to find a young woman on the carpet before him. Miss, he said, tentatively. I tried to speak, but my vocal cords didn't work quite right yet. My lungs were still too busy utilizing my throat for air supply after my sprint up 7 flights of stairs. I stared at the carpet on which I was kneeling, trying to find the energy to raise my head. It was a dark carpet, with simple and rather austere geometric patterns. Somebody really should hire an interior decorator here. Get a grip, I told myself, and clambered to my feet. Looking around, I saw that I was standing in a longish room, almost a corridor, with doors leading off at regular intervals to the sides. At the very end of the room was a large double door of dark wood. Between me and the door stood only the desk, and behind the desk sat the anxious, narrow-faced young man. This had to be Mr. Stone. I'm here to see Mr. Ambrose, I panted with as much dignity as one can muster while gasping for air. Quickly I tried to smooth out the wrinkles in my dress, but they resisted stubbornly. Are you? He left the sentence hanging in the air as if afraid to finish it. I'm Miss Lillian Linton. Ah, yes, Mr. Stone nodded. I was told you would be coming. He threw a furtive look back at the double door. And you really have to see Mr. Ambrose, miss? Yes. And you have an appointment? Yes. Very well. Swallowing, Mr. Stone picked up one of those horn speak-through thingies from his desk and placed it at his mouth. Sir, I'm sorry to disturb you, Mr. Ambrose, sir, but there is someone to see you. A Miss Lillian Linton. He put the horn to his ear for a few seconds, listening, then frowned and looked up at me apologetically. Miss, Mr. Ambrose says he does not know a Miss Linton. I gave him my very sweetest smile, sweeter than solid chocolate. Tell him we met last Friday in the street. I'm sure he will remember. Of course, miss. Mr. Stone cleared his throat and nodded, dutifully. He was really a very nice, accommodating young man. Mr. Ambrose, the young lady says. He repeated my message. For a second or two, everything was still and silent. Then Mr. Stone jerked the listening horn away from his ear. I could faintly hear someone shouting on the other end and caught a string of expletives. Yes, Mr. Ambrose, sir. Mr. Stone had gone as white as a sheet and was speaking hurriedly into the horn. Certainly, Mr. Ambrose, sir. What should I tell the young lady, Mr. Ambrose, sir? The answer came over the line, and Mr. Stone's eyes widened, his face turning beet red. But sir, I cannot tell her to go and do that. No, not a respectable young lady. The shouting on the other end resumed, probably on the subject of my alleged respectability. It seemed that Mr. Ambrose had quite a lot to say about that, and none of it was complimentary. Well, what then, Mr. Ambrose, sir? Asked the young man timidly. He waited again, then nodded when the answer came. Yes, sir, immediately, sir. Mr. Stone looked up at me, his ears still red. Mr. Ambrose wishes to see you at once, Miss Linton. I bet he does, I thought, but said nothing and instead merely smiled at the young desk clerk again. He was really quite nice, for a man. Mr. Stone rose, and, leading me past his desk, guided me to the large double door that was, as I now realized, the entrance to the private office of Mr. Rickard Ambrose. Just before the door he stopped, leaned over and whispered, miss, be careful, yes, Mr. Ambrose is very, well, just be careful. With that elucidating statement, he held the door open for me, and I entered, my heart hammering, knowing that the future course of my life might well depend on the man inside. Now why didn't that make me feel very good? His indecent demands. As the doors closed behind me, my eyes were drawn immediately to the dark figure standing in front of the window at the opposite end of the room. Heavy curtains half covered the large windows even this early in the morning, and the lean figure of the man was cast in shadows. I could not see his face, but I could feel his eyes on me. Quickly, I glanced around. No landscapes on the wall, no tapestries, not even a portrait of dear X with his wife y their 3 large, hairy dogs. God, did this man have an allergy to decoration? Maybe I should have chosen the simpler of my dresses for this meeting after all. To my left, massive wooden bookshelves covered one wall, but the rest of the walls weren't paneled wood as was customary in most offices. They weren't even painted, but consisted of the same dark stone as the outside of the building. Yes, I had diagnosed the decoration allergy correctly, and I didn't even have a medical degree. My eyes returned to the man at the window. Suddenly, he moved and sat down at the large wooden desk that, besides the bookshelves, was pretty much the only piece of furniture in the room. Light from the window fell onto his face and illuminated the hard, chiseled features of Mr. Rickard Ambrose. Again it struck me that, for a man, he didn't look half bad. Maybe not even a quarter. For some reason, my heart rate picked up as I looked at him. Welcome, Mr. Ambrose said in a cool voice. Kind of you to drop by. Take a seat. My mouth dropped open. I had expected him to be angry, boiling mad, even, but there he was, as cool as a cucumber. Hesitantly I went to the visitor's chair opposite his own. As soon as I had sat down, I regretted it. The thing was made of plain, hard wood and almost hurt to sit on. I straightened my back and it got a little better. With agonizing slowness, Mr. Rickard Ambrose rested his elbows on the desk in front of him and steepled his fingers. Over the tops of his finely manicured hands, he regarded me with those dark, sea-colored eyes of his. Dark eyes in which I could see something royal. Well, he said, after 2 or 3 seconds of silence. I believe I already told you that I do not appreciate time wasters, Miss Linton, was it? I nodded. So what do you want? I swallowed, and said nothing. God, how to phrase this? He regarded me coolly for a few more moments, then added, if you are concerned about me pressing charges against you, do not worry. I have no desire to ruin a lady's reputation, especially the reputation of a lady who is not right in the head. He looked down at his desk and studied a few papers lying there. If that is all, Miss Linton. The dismissal was obvious in his tone of voice, but I didn't pay attention. I was still too busy processing the not right in the head comment. Not right in the head. Why? Because I put on a pair of trousers. Because I wanted a say in the government of my country. I'll give him not right in the head. Actually, no, I blurted out, my voice coming out sharper than I had intended. That wasn't why I came. I came because you requested it. I came to take up the position of your private secretary. His eyes, having perused line after line of whatever document lay before him, froze. Then they snapped up to me. His face seemed not quite as expressionless as before. Silence hovered over the two of us, thick and heavy. Finally he said, but you are a girl. I bowed my head in what I hoped would be a demure manner. But it probably looked more sarcastic than demure. How kind of you to notice, Mr. Ambrose. His gaze traveled up and down my figure, taking in the hoop skirt, my styled hair and various parts of my anatomy pushed into the right place by my corset. Not so very kind. The fact is rather hard to overlook. You were not so observant the last time we met. He narrowed his eyes about a millimeter. The last time we met, you had taken great pains to disguise yourself, if I remember, in a manner some might call infamous and outrageous. I narrowed my eyes more than just a millimeter and crossed my arms defiantly. I was wearing trousers. Why is that infamous? They're just a piece of cloth and don't make me any less of a girl. If you went around dressed in a ball gown, would that make you any less of a man? I'm afraid I've never yet made the experiment, Miss Linton, he replied, frostily. A mental image popped into my head of Mr. Cold Masculinity Ambrose in a frilly off-the-shoulders ball gown with a big hoop skirt and a paper fan in his hand. I had to work hard to keep from laughing. His tone told me that that wouldn't have been a good idea. He didn't seem to be a person who appreciated mirth, to put it mildly. So instead of laughing at him, I did the next best thing. I fixed him with a determined look and said, "We're wandering from the subject. I didn't come here to talk to you about fashion. I came to work." Shaking his head derisively, he asked, "So you persist in this ludicrous claim that you want to work as my secretary?" "I do, and it isn't ludicrous. When can I take up my new duties?" "You can't." "Why not?" "Because I will most certainly not give you the position." "Why not?" "I do not have to explain myself to you, Miss Linton." Panic started to well up inside me, and I did my best to push it back down. This was what I had feared. He wouldn't even consider taking me on. He would throw me out. Now I had only one last chance. It all depended on one question now. Was Mr. Rickard Ambrose a gentleman, or only a man? "You offered me the position," I said in a soft voice. "Do you break your word so easily, sir?" Anger flashed in his eyes, and I could see it, the wounded honor of a gentleman. "Yes, I had him." "You dare impugn my honor, miss?" he demanded, his voice deadly quiet. I knew that had I been a man, he would have flung his glove at me, and I would have had to meet him the next day for a bloody satisfaction. But I was not a man, and he was trapped. The only thing he could do was break his word, or honor it. "Yes," I answered, breathless. "If you do not keep your word, I do." "My word would not be broken," he said, in that quiet voice that sent a shiver down my back. "You deceived me." "How so?" My crossed arms tightened in front of my chest. This was going to be a heavy battle. "I hired you under the misapprehension that you were a man. I never said I was. In fact, I specifically told you that I wasn't the man for the job." He seemed stunned for just a moment. Then, taking in a deep breath, he admitted, "So you did. Still, you can't have the position." "Why? Has the position already been filled?" He hesitated for a second, then said in a slightly grudging voice, "No. Has anyone better qualified than I applied?" "Anyone would be better than you." My face hardened. "How so?" He placed his hands on the desktop, as if trying to suck up calm from the even surface. "A girl working as a secretary," he growled. "It is impossible. If the city were to get wind of this, it would be the biggest scandal in years. Besides, females do not have the orderly mind that is required for this kind of work." "Of course they do. We have been kept down for centuries, but you'll see, one day women will conquer their rightful place in the world. One day, there will be hundreds, maybe thousands of women working as secretaries. We will be so good at it that we will put the men out of their jobs, and just about every secretary will be female." He shook his head derisively. "That speech only shows that you have no intellect and grasp of reality. Thousands of women working as secretaries all over the world. The thought is ridiculous. All I want is the chance to prove you wrong." And I said, "No, you are a girl. I cannot have a girl in my office. I would be the laughing stock of the city of London, of the entire country even." "I'm sure the city and country will find funnier things to laugh about than you," I said, regarding his stony face, not able to entirely keep the sarcasm out of my voice. He gave me a stare from those cold, dark eyes that could have frozen lava. "I don't appreciate being made fun of, Miss Linton. I can see that, Mr. Ambrose. And I do not appreciate my questions not being given full and honest replies." "What do you mean? Has anyone better qualified than I applied for the position of your private secretary?" A few seconds hesitation again. Then, "No." "Well then," taking a deep breath, I unfolded my arms and rubbed my hands. "When may I begin with my new duties?" His hostile stare intensified to a force that almost knocked me off my chair and made the muscles in my stomach tighten with fear. "I need a man," he said very slowly, enunciating each word. "A man, Miss Linton. Not a girl who will run off screaming at the things she will see where my kind of business takes me." "I hold you to your word," I replied, glaring just as stubbornly, though maybe not quite so impressively, back at him. "I ask you, are you a gentleman or a liar? You told me to come and work for you. I didn't ask you, and now you want to back out." He stared at me, and stared, and stared. Half a minute. An entire minute. After 2 minutes, I was getting fidgety and wanted to blink, but didn't. I was not backing down on this. He would have to keep his word or throw me out into the street himself. 3 whole minutes he looked at me like this. Then, towards the end of the 3rd minute, something seemed to spark in his dark eyes, and though his facial expression didn't really change, he somehow suddenly seemed satisfied, victorious. Oh no, he had decided to forget about honor and throw me out. I knew it. I just knew it. "Fine," he said. "The position is yours." My jaw dropped. What? Had I heard correctly? It is, I stammered, unable to contain my surprise. "Yes," he said, his voice as cool and calm as ever. "I gave my word, and my honor is at stake here. Naturally, a gentleman must keep his word. The position of private secretary belongs to you." My heart started hammering wildly. Was this really it? Finally, my independence, my chance to build a career as a free woman. But there was something that wasn't quite right. Mr. Ambrose didn't look resigned. In spite of the fact that this should be nettling him to no end, he looked pleased with himself. Darn pleased with himself. Though of course he didn't go so far as to actually allow a smile to appear on his stony features. I could feel it. Self-satisfaction radiated off him. Like a sleek black cat that doesn't need to smile, only show its claws to prove to the world how superior it is. You will, of course, be wearing the proper uniform, he said, looking down at the papers on his desk again. I frowned. Uniform. I hadn't seen anyone in his office so far who wore a uniform. What was he talking about? Certainly, he replied, still not looking up. The same uniform you wore on the day I first had the pleasure to meet you, Mr. Linton. It took a moment or two, then the penny dropped. I jumped up from my chair as if it had bit me in the arse. You expect me to come and work for you dressed up as a man? I gasped. He looked up, sharply. I expect you to come to work dressed exactly the same as on the day I acquired your services, Mr. Linton. I want exactly what I bought, and I am going to get it. Do you understand that, Mr. Linton? I won't do it. He was out of his chair and around the desk in a heartbeat. It is your choice, he said, stepping so close to me that our lips were almost touching. Either do what I say, or get another job. For a moment, my heart stood still as I gazed up into his deep, dark, dangerous eyes. Then I tore myself away from the sight, turned on my heels and angrily stomped towards the door. I threw it open and rushed past the bewildered Mr. Stone. Good day, Miss Linton, he called after me, hardly concealed triumph in his voice. Well, I thought to myself, we'll just see about that. He wants war, he can have it. File fight. Excuse me. Mr. Stone looked up from his desk and his eyes widened. I would like to see Mr. Ambrose, please. I have an appointment. Mr. Stone blinked, sat motionless for a few seconds, and blinked again. Only then did he recover from his astonishment. Oh, I'm so sorry, sir. Of course. I was only distracted for a moment because just half an hour ago there was a young lady here, also asking for Mr. Ambrose, and you and she. He trailed off, gazing in amazement at the small young man with longish brown hair standing in front of him. I tried to force a smile on my face. That was my sister. Oh, that explains it, said Mr. Stone, a bright smile ousting the puzzled expression from his face. May I say, sir, that you and she share the most amazing family resemblance? I've often thought so myself. Even your hairstyles are rather similar. It is truly intriguing. Thank you. And what is your name, sir? Lee. I bit my tongue. Darn. In my haste to get home, change and return, I had completely forgotten that as a man, I could hardly go by the name of Lillian. My mind was as blank as the walls of Mr. Ambrose's office as I tried to think of a name, any name that I could tell Mr. Stone. Finally, my thoughts landed on the royal family. Victor, I blurted out. Victor Linton. Thank God, when all else failed, one could still rely on the Queen of England. 13. Very well, Mr. Linton. Wait a moment please, while I see if Mr. Ambrose is ready to receive you. He took up the metal horn from the desk and spoke into it. Mr. Ambrose, Mr. Linton to see you. In response, there came only silence from the other end. Mr. Ambrose, are you there? Now there did come a noise from the other end. It sounded like something between a moan from a medieval torture chamber and the growl of a wounded Siberian tiger. Mr. Ambrose, sir, are you all right? Apparently Mr. Ambrose was all right, because he started to speak a few seconds later. I couldn't make out what he was saying, and part of me was glad for that. Stone nodded, put down the horn and then looked up at me smiling. Mr. Linton, he said, I have been informed that you have been accepted as Mr. Simmons' replacement and are now a member of the staff. May I take this opportunity to welcome you? He got up, walked around the desk, held out a hand for me to shake. Hesitantly, I reached out. I had never shaken a man's hand before, only curtsied. Would he be able to tell that I was a woman by a handshake? Determined not to give him any clues, I resolved to make my grip convincingly strong and masculine. Ouch, Mr. Stone grimaced. All right, maybe I had overdone it with the masculinity. Yes, welcome, as I said. Now, where was I? Cautiously, he removed his hand from my grip and flexed his fingers. Yes, Mr. Ambrose regrets to inform you that he does not have time to receive you right now, since urgent business detains him. He wishes you to go directly into the secretary's office and wait for instructions there. I frowned. Urgent business that detains him. What business could be so urgent that he couldn't receive his private secretary? It should be my job to help him with his urgent business, shouldn't it? But orders were orders, and though I usually wasn't very good at obeying orders, these were different. Unlike my aunt, Mr. Ambrose would have to pay me for bossing me around. So I simply asked, the secretary's office. With his thumb, Mr. Stone indicated a door to the right of his desk. That door over there. I hope you find everything to your satisfaction, Mr. Linton. If there is anything I can help you with, please don't hesitate to ask. Wow, if all my new colleagues were like this, working for a living would actually be a piece of cake. Maybe even a chocolate cake with extra sugar. Then I remembered my new employer, and reconsidered. No, not a piece of cake. Definitely not. A piece of granite might be an appropriate description. I walked over to the door Mr. Stone had indicated. I reached for the doorknob. I grasped and turned it, holding my breath. With a low click, the door swung open. Nervously, I peered into my new domain. The room was just as I might have expected. Bare stone walls, heavy curtains, a large desk. It looked like a smaller version of Mr. Ambrose's office, except that here, the desk stood against the wall and much of the space was taken up by enormous shelves holding large, differently colored boxes. They all had numbers and letters written on them. Good God, what was this? Seeing these vast mountains of paper, it occurred to me for the first time to wonder what the duties of a private secretary would actually be. Ever since my discovery of his wealth, I had expected Mr. Rickard Ambrose to be a rich landowner and that, as his secretary, I would maybe have to write a few letters for him when he was too lazy to do it himself. But apparently he wrote and received a hell of a lot more than just a few letters. I was in for more than I had bargained for. Tiptoeing over to one of the boxes, I could see under the cryptic message, 29 volts 118 feet the explanation, Georg. Gr. Spiffing, 14, who was Georg Gr. Sounded foreign. He had to be a most dedicated letter writer, though. I reached out to open the box, then hesitated. But why not? After all, I was his secretary now. I would have to look through most of these sooner or later. Yes, that was an excellent excuse. Much better than, I'm just nosy. I opened the box and took a few papers out. What I found made me feel even more puzzled. They weren't letters. They were maps, drawings of mountains with short annotations about such things as rockers, nuggets and a whole lot of other things I had never heard of in my life. Mystified, I put the papers back into the box and put it back on the shelf. Then it occurred to me, why was I still waiting? Why had Mr. Rich and Mysterious not called me yet to assist him in his oh-so-urgent business? I wanted to step out from between the shelves, but before I could do so I noticed a door behind them. From the layout of the room I supposed it to be a connecting door to Mr. Ambrose's office. I approached it and carefully tried the knob. Locked. Blimey, this was getting on my nerves. But it was up to him to give me work, not the other way around. Having nothing better to do, I strolled over to the window and looked out over the city. As had been evident already from the outside, Empire House was a lot taller than any of the surrounding buildings and provided a stunning view. My office, I felt a thrill go through me at the words. My office faced west, and in the distance I could see the white dome of St. Paul's Cathedral rising over the houses. I waited, and waited. Great Paul struck 11, and still I waited. I was just about to leave the room and ask Mr. Stone if anything was wrong when I heard a strange sizzling noise from the direction of my desk. Eyebrows raised, I went over to investigate. The noise seemed to be coming from within the wall beside my desk. Whoever had put the stones there had done a shoddy job of it, because in the wall directly over my desktop was a hole, about an inch in diameter. The sizzling noise seemed to originate from there. Curious, I bent forward and put my eye to the hole. I couldn't see anything inside. It was pitch black, but I could hear the sizzling noise getting louder and louder, until... Ouch. Something poked me in the eye, hard, and I staggered back. I almost fell onto my rear end but managed to grab the edge of my desk and stay upright. Bright lights flashed across my field of vision. I blinked furiously. When I could finally see again, I discovered a tiny metal cylinder lying on my desk. Apparently, it had shot out of the hole in the wall and right into my eye. The hole in the wall that was separating my office from that of Mr. Rickard Ambrose. I knew where that cylinder came from. Furious, I grabbed the thing and marched towards the door separating my office from his. Hey. No answer. Hey, I want to know why you tried to poke my eye out. Still no answer. I banged on the door with the hand holding the metal cylinder, and as I did, it fell out of my hand and onto the floor, breaking apart in the process. It was hollow. Curious, I leaned forward and saw that there was a tiny piece of paper rolled up in the cylinder. Taking it out, I unrolled it, revealing a few handwritten words in a clear, precise, no-nonsense hand. Mr. Linton. Bring me file 227B. Rickard Ambrose. Bring me file 227B. Just. Bring me file 227B. That was all. No please, no thank you. God, why did he even feel the need to sign it? No one else I know would write a message that cold, curt and discourteous. Well, maybe my uncle, but discourtesy from family didn't count. And, Mr. Linton, he couldn't even acknowledge the fact that I was a female when there was nobody else around. I had been afraid he was a chauvinist. I had been wrong. He was the king of chauvinists. But he was also the man who wrote my paychecks. So I swallowed the adjectives I would have liked to throw at him and instead demanded of the closed door, why are we communicating via tiny paper rolls? And what is file 227B? No answer, though he must have heard me through the door. The man didn't say a single word. But shortly after, a plink noise came from behind me, and I turned around only to see another missive from my master shooting out of the hole in the wall. Stomping over to the desk, I grabbed it and read, Mr. Linton. We are communicating via tiny paper rolls because this is the most efficient system of communication. And you should be able to find a file on your own if you want to keep your position. Rickard Ambrose. Most efficient form of communication my foot. The cash-carrying bitfaker, 15, just didn't want to talk to me and be reminded that he suffered from the shame of having a girl as his secretary. Well, two could play at that game. I started to rummage through my desk, opening and shutting drawers at a prodigious rate. Finally, I found what I was looking for. In the bottom drawer was a bowl full of metal cylinders and another one full of little bits of paper. I took both out, grabbed the fountain pen that was lying on the desk and began to scribble. Dear Mr. Ambrose. May I ask with all due politeness what kind of devilish invention this is you are forcing me to use? Thoughtfully, I tapped my lower lip with the pen. Then I closed the message with, I remain. Sincerely yours. Miss Lily Linton. Yes, show him that a proper girl can be courteous even if a stinking rich man cannot. Very pleased with myself, I put the cylinder into the hole in the wall. It didn't move. Frowning, I examined the hole more closely, and then discovered a little lever right beside it. Well, it couldn't hurt to try. Probably. Cautiously, my fingers curled around the lever, hoping fervently it wouldn't make the building explode or something like that. I pulled. There was a sucking noise, and the little metal container vanished into the hole. Phew, I hated mechanical stuff. You never knew what would happen when you pushed a button. For a minute or two, I sat at my desk, twiddling my thumbs. But I didn't have to wait long for a reply. With another plink, the metal missive container shot out of the hole and landed on my desk. I grabbed it eagerly and unrolled the message. Ha, at least this time he would have to be more courteous. He would have to accept me as a girl, wouldn't he? I read. Mr. Linton. This devilish invention, as you deem it, is the latest technical innovation for high-speed communication, called pneumatic tubes. It allows me to communicate with all my employees in the entire building without leaving my office. This system has served me admirably ever since its installation. I would be required to change my modus operandi in order to communicate with you vocally. That will not happen. I do not change a working system. Bring me file 227B. And incidentally, I do not want you as mine, sincerely or otherwise. Rickard Ambrose. My eyes went wide as I read the last line before his name. The abominable, villainous, that had just been a courteous closing line. Nothing more. I hadn't meant that. Well, I hadn't meant anything like the thing he obviously meant. Seething with rage, I grabbed another piece of paper and scribbled, "Dear Mr. Ambrose. I am a female, in case you still have not noticed. How am I to give you file whatever it's called if you do not open your bloody door? Yours infuriatedly. Miss Lily Linton." The reply came soon. "Mr. Linton. You are no female while you are in my employ, as, by the way, you have amply proven by your language. Slide the file under the door. Rickard Ambrose." What, now he complained about me not expressing myself in a ladylike manner, after he had forced me to come to work dressed up in a pair of striped trousers. I itched to send back another snarky remark. But this man was my master now. He was the one who would hopefully one day sign my first paycheck. He was my ticket to freedom. My only chance. Blast him. I hurried over to the shelves that held the boxes. 2 minutes of searching were enough for me to discover that whatever system my predecessor had used to sort his files, it most certainly was not an alphabetical one. 20 minutes of searching went by, and I still hadn't discovered what I was looking for. As I was taking an extraordinarily large and heavy box from one of the upper shelves, I heard a familiar plink from my desk. Balancing the monument of a file container on my shoulder, I totted over to my desk, picked up the metal cylinder with one hand, opened it with my teeth and spat the removed half into the bowl on my desk.